Great afternoon, great evening to a large part of my audience. I am Shadid Elazer, and welcome to the Digital Assets Series. This is day one of three, where we're going to walk through, categorize, identify, demystify, and finally provide the roadmap to action to package your brain and deliver it via digital assets. This is a topic that is near and dear to not only my heart, but my processes, in that it is very much a part of my day to day productivity cycle, in that everything that I do or that I know is somehow in some way funneled into some form of digital offering. And this approach, which started back in 2005, has changed the trajectory of my career, my business, my life, and my ability to impact the causes and people that I hold near and dear. Now, when we talk about digital assets, or digital real estate, there's a lot of different terms that come up. And so I want to provide a base definition. And I know that with this base definition, there are often some different schools of thought around this, but I'm going to give you mine, and I'm going to give you a clear reason why. First of all, when we talk about the question, what are digital assets? Digital assets are content that is able to be rented, licensed, acquired by corporations, learning institutions, and agencies. And some of you will say, well, if a course, for example, is published online and is generating revenue or generating money of some sort, it is an asset. But in this case, if you don't take the steps to assume ownership from it, then when that course starts to succeed, then you begin to run into trademark issues. And otherwise, since the digital asset domain is so heavily pirated and people are often stealing and copying, you run into a whole host of issues. So with my approach, based on my experience of hands-on creating hundreds of digital assets for myself and thousands of digital assets along with my clients, it's very important to think of ownership first, or think beyond the act of creation. And when you look at, let's say, the history of creators in general, you'll often find that many people create with love in mind, or passion, or creativity in mind. And as it gains traction and it gains popularity, it is often heisted or pirated by someone who simply understands the law as it relates to content or works of art, and different publishing rules, so on and so forth. So that is why rented, licensed, acquired is part of my general definition, because in order to do that, you must have some form of ownership in it. And so it's a little bit deeper than just creating a course. Yes, creating a course can change your life. Yes, creating a course can generate 5, 6, 7 figures, change a zip code, change your tax bracket, change your life, but it's thinking beyond that. Case in point, for those of you who have courses that are currently successful, you have students enrolled, doesn't matter the actual platform, and let's say you were to fall suddenly ill and you're unable to teach the classes anymore. Or if you fall suddenly ill and your power of attorney or your family member does not know your passwords to your course, where your course is hosted, or your credit card expires for the hosting that you purchased for that particular course, which is doing very well. Let's say it's a 6-figure, 7-figure, let's say it's 7-figure course. The question is, if something was to happen to you where you either died or became incapacitated, what would be your plan in order to recoup? And for many people, it is a very, very, very sad story when this comes into play. So these are the questions that I want you to think about when you're thinking about what you're creating. So next, we're going to look at some big mistakes that tend to happen when it comes to digital assets. First of all, the biggest issue that tends to come up when it comes to content and overall is that many creators don't understand the value of their creations. Many just create for the sake of just, getting ideas out to the world. And the one thing I want you to keep in mind, remember, and understand is that content is intellectual property. Your content is your intellectual property, and you must think of that as such. Giving away your content freely without a thought in mind, and I don't mean a free download or a free PDF or lead magnet or bonus, because that's all a part of marketing, that's all a part of lead generation. It's thinking of the big picture, the big umbrella as it relates to your content, and the ownership of it is something that we have to think more about. And so when we start to talk about packaging that content as it becomes successful, as it becomes tested, and delivering it to a corporation, for example, which is my specialty, then thinking about that intellectual property up front and making sure that you take the proper steps to protect and preserve your your IP is of utmost importance. So content is intellectual property. We often say content is king. Content is king, but content is intellectual property. And if you approach it from that standpoint, then you'll be able to understand that you can bargain, leverage, negotiate using your content that has been created. Where many creators, where many service providers fall flat is the idea that they don't organize their content under certain themes. And we'll start to look at that in day 2 of this training, but this is something that you need to understand. And so when we talk about content and we talk about digital assets, it's the game that everyone is playing. And so if I'm to share my screen for a second, and we go, for example, to udemy.com. And so when you look at udemy.com, it's in itself, a single course is not a digital asset because the course owner is within a marketplace that controls and regulates the pricing, so on and so forth. But Udemy as a whole can absolutely be rented to a business, and they do have a business licensing service or agreement. It absolutely can be acquired by a parent company. It absolutely can sell parts or portions of the courses to different Fortune 500 companies. So Udemy is 1000% a digital asset. Next, we look at Netflix. And so for the creator who submits content to Netflix, they submit their content, and there's different deals that are structured, and there's a payout of some sort. There may even be a royalty that is assigned. But Netflix, as the parent that houses the content, they control the purse strings. They retain the rights. They can rent their content, which they do to consumers for $12 to $13 a month. Can it be acquired? Absolutely. And so when you start to look at what can be done when you have and you retain the ownership, the question then becomes, what about you? And what about your business? And how can you create a Netflix effect for your business? How can you create a Udemy for your business? And when you start to go down that path, that is where the digital assets game becomes more and more interesting. I'll give you a case in point. So if you are an accountant and you somewhere along the way, maybe you watched a video of mine discussing digital assets, or someone who has a similar mindset, and you said, wait a minute, I need to package my knowledge and I need to make it available for the people who support my work. And so you went down this path and you became a machine and you created this content over and over and over again. What begins to happen is you now have a catalog. And so we've heard of the value of catalogs throughout the history of music, for example, with the Beatles or with Michael Jackson. Kanye West recently had some major news when it came to his master recordings and the value of those. So creating content with a mission, a grand purpose in mind is where you're able to build that catalog behind yourself. Now, that catalog becomes a negotiating bargaining chip when you speak to corporations. So using the example of the accountant, you can go to a company and say, I have a turnkey solution that will provide, let's say, financial literacy for your business, or to provide your group of accountants with top-notch training that they need to be more proficient. The business owner, the decision maker, who spends the majority of their, let's say, revenue on the training, onboarding, continuous education of their employees, is going to think and weigh what the cost of losing an employee who is not trained, who, let's say, fails to meet state and federal regulations as accountants. And they have to invest in something to keep their employees, let's say, continuously growing. So why not you? Using another example of the accountant. So let's say the accountant is passionate about financial literacy and helping kids be more financially savvy. So the accountant goes to the local school board or school district and begins to discuss a financial literacy curriculum add-on to the school system. So that oftentimes comes with discussing the table of contents and essentially building an a la carte curriculum. So I'm going to cherry pick this module. I'm going to cherry pick this module. This module would be great for my kids. I think it'd be hands-on for them to write their own checks, for example. And so these are different aspects that you can leverage in these scenarios when you have your brain packaged into digital assets and building with a focus in mind, which equals catalogs, and you're able to have incredible leverage when discussing the problems and ultimately solutions for corporate America, for the educational system, for solopreneurs, anyone who has a problem that you specifically solve and that they have a budget to rent, to purchase outright. So that is the power of digital assets. So when we talk about the time for money trap, the time for money trap, and I understand that there's a lot of information that is being thrown at you at this time. So I have a checklist that will explain the digital assets process step by step to help you get started. And all you have to do within the comments is comment checklist, and it will be sent to you uh, through the magic of email. So, time for money trap and how digital assets can help. So, what often happens with self employed is that they land a client or they land a contract. And in most cases, the pay may be a little higher than standard employees. So, things are great. When the contract is running, everything's good. And what tends to happen is the off and on or hot and cold periods when a contract is off, what tends to happen is you're on a project and you're not building those relationships. You're not prospecting because you're working. Contract's over. Now you're prospecting and basically spamming the prospecting process. And so there has to be a better way. If every time you expend energy, you get paid time for money, then what happens when you don't have the time? Or what happens when clients won't give you the time in order to earn the money? Your finances become up and down. It becomes a roller coaster, a tidal wave. And what we want is stability and upward mobility. So, what digital assets allow you to do is to create a stream of income based on the fact that people are searching for the problems that you solve each and every day. And so when you put this asset out to the world, it does a number of things. Number one, it establishes your credibility. So if you find that you have the same questions in your strategy calls that people are asking, then you can put that into an accelerator course and give people those steps. And what this will do is give a prerequisite for people in order for them to work with you one on one. It creates a barrier of accomplishment that they must meet in order to work on a deeper level with you. So that frees up your time, it establishes your credibility, and it helps you to define your signature process. Next, the time for money trap becomes less, let's say, harder to escape because you now have the ability to generate income outside of the time for money equation. So it's a big world out there. People are searching for information each and every day. So, yes, so what we've covered in this day one of the digital asset series is we went into what digital assets are and what they aren't. We also went into briefly discussing content and its relationship to intellectual property. We also looked at a few examples of digital assets that are crushing and redefining the game that we play. And finally, how digital assets can help you escape the time for money trap and the rat race that we all start with. But when you create leverage for yourself through packaging your knowledge and selling your brain to an audience who is searching for it every day, by the millions online, then you begin to create that financial freedom that you have read about and that you ultimately want for yourself, for your family, and your community. Once again, I am Shadidi Laser, and you've been tuning in to day one of the Digital Assets series. Comment the word checklist below in the comments in order to receive your digital assets execution plan. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, to go deeper into content libraries, what they are, and how you can create them in your business.